Next, what we're going to do is work on addition and subtraction of fractions. A lot of people get confused with it, but I'm going to show you a way that's going to be very, very simple for you, and so you're not going to stress out, not going to worry too much about it. So the most important thing when we're dealing with addition and in subtraction of fractions, and this is very important, so make sure you remember this, the only way you can add or subtract fractions at all is if those bottom numbers, those denominators, are the same. You cannot add fractions unless those two denominators are the same. I'm going to say it one more time because it's so important. You cannot add or subtract fractions unless those bottom numbers in those fractions are the same number. It did not matter in multiplication and division, and that's why they're easier. You don't have to worry about what the numbers are. But when you're adding and subtracting, you always have to look at the denominators of the fractions. Okay? So let's take a good example of that. 3/5 plus 3/5. Okay? So we have two fractions, 3/5 plus 3/5. What I'm trying to say is that in order for you to do this addition, these two numbers on the bottom, the 5 and the 5, they must be the same. So if the fractions that you're given already have the same denominators, which are the same bottom numbers, then it's easy. I'll show you how to add them. If the numbers are different on the bottom, then you have to do one step before you can add them. And that's really all there is to it. We'll get to that when we get to it. But let's first do this one. If they are the same, all you do is you add the top numbers. 3 plus 3 is 6. And you do not add the bottom ones. You just keep the bottom one. So you're going to get 6/5. You can try to simplify that, but in this case, you can't simplify it anymore, so you're done. Let me say it one more time. You add the top numbers to get the new top number. The bottom numbers, you do not add them. You just keep the bottom numbers. Because really what I've got here is 3/5 of a pizza. 3/5 of a pizza. My answer is 6/5 of a pizza. It has to be in terms of the original denominator, and that's just the way fractions work. Okay? So the answer in this case is going to be in terms of how many fifths of a pizza have I given away. I've given 3/5 to Tommy, given 3/5 to Bobby. Altogether, I've given away 6/5. That's why it has to be in terms of that same denominator. Now, let me get another one here. Let's say I've got 4/13 minus 3/13. So I'm subtracting, but the same thing holds. These bottom numbers are already the same, so I'm okay. I just subtract the numerators. 4 minus 3 is 1. I do not subtract the bottom ones. I just keep it. So I have 1/13. And that's already simplified. Okay? So I'll just give you two examples, but that's how it works. You keep the bottom number, you subtract, or you add the top. You simplify the result. Very, very simple. Now here's where most people start to get confused. What if I give you 1/6 plus 1/24? And I say add those fractions. Now things start to get a little more, I don't want to call it complicated because it's not hard, it's just different. Because these bottom numbers are not the same. They're not the same. So I've already told you I cannot add them unless they are the same. So anytime you try to add or subtract fractions, the bottom numbers are different, you must make them the same by any means that are legal to you. And I'm going to teach you those ways. And if you can do that, then you can add them, right? So let me ask you this. I already told you that you can do anything you want to the top and the bottom of a fraction as far as multiplying and dividing. Anything you want, as long as you do it to the top and to the bottom. So if I wanted to change this denominator into a 24, then all I would do is multiply by 4, right? If I wanted to multiply this bottom number by 4, I would get 24 for my new denominator. But the only way to make that legal is to also multiply the top by 4, okay? So if I do that, I'm going to get over here, I'm going to get 4/24 over here. Now, how did I get, and I'm going to add to that, let me just write this down, 1/24. I've transformed this fraction into this over here. How did I get from here to there? All I did was I took 1/6, and I multiplied the top by 4, and I multiplied the bottom by 4. And that's how I got there. 1 times 4 is 4. 6 times 4 is 24. You can do anything you want. So you just need to find one of these numbers that you can multiply by to give me the same denominator as the other fraction. So here I have two fractions with the same denominator. So I'm good now. To get the answer, 4 plus 1 is 5. I do not add the bottoms. I just keep them. 24. 5/24. And that's the answer. It's already simplified. You always look to see if you can simplify it more, but it's already done, so you're finished. So that's really all it amounts to. This is what we call in fractions finding the common denominator. It has such a fancy sounding name, but really all it means is figure out a way to make these bottom numbers the same and do it legally, and then you can add the fractions. So we're going to do a bunch of problems here to make sure that you are totally comfortable with this guy, with this idea. So what I'm going to have here is 3/5 plus 2/3. Now this is even a little bit more complicated, but the same exact goal is what I'm trying to do. I need to get these numbers on the bottom to be the same. All right? I can't just work with one fraction because if I multiply 3 by something, I'm never going to get 5. I can't just work with this fraction because multiplying something times 5, I'm never going to get 3. So I need to be a little more creative here. But let me show you what we can do. Let me go down below here. 3/5, all right, and then plus 2/3. Let me ask you what's going to happen. If I multiply the top by 3 and the bottom by 3, I have changed nothing in this fraction. If I multiply the top by 5 and the bottom by 5, I have changed nothing in this fraction because I'm totally legal here. When I do this, 3 times 3 is 9, 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 times 5 is 10, 3 times 5 is 15. Now I have common denominator. So you see, that's all you're doing. You can multiply a fraction by anything you want in the top and the bottom as long as you do it to the top and the bottom. So you're free to choose anything you want. I'm choosing what's easy for me. I know if I multiply by 3, I'm going to get 15. I know if I multiply by 5, I'm going to get 15. So I just need to do it to the top as well, and I get this. So when I continue on, 9 plus 10 is 19/15. And that's already totally simplified. There's nothing more to do, 19/15. So keep that in mind when you're adding or subtracting fractions. If the denominators are the same, you just do what we've shown how to do and add or subtract them. If the denominators are different, then you just need to make them the same by any means that's legal before you can add or subtract these fractions. Now what we're going to do now is erase this board that I filled up and continue working some problems to give you some practice. Okay, our next problem is 9/4 minus 5/6. So I've got two fractions, two totally different denominators. I know that I'm not going to be able to work with just one of them because there's no way I can multiply 4 by anything to give me 6. There's no way I can multiply 6 by anything to give me 4. So I'm going to have to do something to both of these fractions. So let me rewrite them. 9/4 minus 5/6. What can I do? I mean, you're really given any latitude that you want to do. But when I look at 4 and 6, I start to immediately think of the number 12 in my head because I know that 4 will go into 12 and I know that 6 will go into 12. So if I multiply this by 3 and then multiply, of course, the top by 3 to keep it legal, and if I multiply this times 2 and then multiply the top by 2 to keep it legal, then I'm going to get 12 for the new denominator in both cases. So I've got the same number in the bottom. 9 times 3 is 27 on the top. Of course, I get 12 on the bottom, minus 10 on the top, and then I've got 12 on the bottom. So I've achieved my goal. I now have 12 in the bottom. Now, in order to actually subtract them, I just subtract the top. What's 27 minus 10? You'll get 17 over 12. And that's already simplified. 17/12. There's nothing else to do. You see, it's very easy. Common denominators give so many students trouble. I think it's the way it's explained. If you just give you guys the freedom to do what you want to give these denominators the same number, you'll be fine. Let's look at 7/10 minus 1/14. Looks like a very scary problem prior to today. But what we need to do is figure out a common denominator. What can we multiply these to sort of make them the same thing? I can choose anything I want to do, but you know, if you play with it enough and you think about it enough, if I multiply this one by 7 on the bottom, I'm going to get 70. I've got to do it on the top to make it legal. If I multiply this one over here by 5, I'm also going to get 70. Now, you may not see that right away, and that's okay. You just have to play with it a little bit. You'll get experience and practice with it. But by and large, all I'm doing is picking a number so I can get the same number when I multiply, or I can get the same denominator. 7 times 7 is 49, and this is 70 right here. 1 times 5 is 5, and then I have 70 here. Okay, so what is 49 minus 5? It's 44. over 70. And then that's the answer, right? But you need to always look and see, can I simplify this more? I know I can divide by 2. What's 44 divided by 2? It's going to give me 22. What's 70 divided by 2? It's going to give me 35. And if I look at this, I don't believe I'm able to simplify that anymore. So it looks complicated, but it's really the same thing. And that's really going to conclude. I could do 20 more problems, but really they're not any more difficult. They're not any more complicated. All you're doing is looking at these denominators, you know, and trying to come up with some number to multiply each one of them by so that I can get whatever, any number. It doesn't matter what the new denominator is. Try to get it, okay? And then, of course, to make it legal, you have to do the same thing to the top. Do your subtraction, and then always check to see if you're fully simplified. If you do those steps, you'll always get the right answer. Now, what I want to do here before I close